Hey, I'm back with Finding Home, and I'm on chapter 10. This one is spoken by Ashley. The chapter is called The Mud, the Menace, and the Mentos. Ashley wasn't sure if she was awake or not. She was in her bed and she could hear the storm outside, but instead of Bloomington, she was back home in Ann Arbor. Her old walls surrounded her and she could smell the familiar air. The rain sounded just like it had in Michigan. She felt warm and wonderful and cozy. But then, bit by bit, Ashley opened her eyes and looked around. Her heart sank to her feet. No, she was not home, after all. She was here, in the big, cold bedroom in Bloomington. Ashley sat up. Water pelted the window like popcorn. Normally, today would mean wearing rain boots to school, but Mom had announced last night that their boots were still in the unpacked boxes in the garage, so the Baxter children were stuck wearing tennis shoes. The problem came when Mom dropped them off. One minute, Ashley was waving goodbye to her mother, not paying attention to the ground, and the next, she stepped right in the middle of a deep, muddy puddle. She gasped and looked down. No, this cannot be happening. Both her pretty white shoes were totally covered in mud. Luke and Aaron ran to their classes. Only Carrie stayed to see how the muddy shoes tragedy was going to play out. She stared at Ashley's shoes. That's a lot of mud. I'm a disaster, Carrie. A muddy mess. Ashley put her feet out in front of her and leaned back. Ash, you're getting soaked. Carrie covered her smile with her hand. What are you doing? Cleaning myself. Ashley leaned back a little more, and then something even worse happened. She started to fall. At the last second, she threw herself forward, and her knees landed in the exact same mud puddle. Ashley looked up from her spot on the ground. I might need to call in sick today. Mud fever. Carrie helped Ashley to her feet just as the first bell rang. We have to go. Carrie sounded panicked. She hated being late as much as Ashley did. She helped Ashley into the restroom, and the two of them used paper towels to clean up their clumps. Mud streaks were everywhere. Ashley's shoes and knees and her raincoat and her pink shirt. The girls did their best, but it wasn't enough. Carrie stepped back and studied her. At least you're dry and your face and hands are clean. The ground never got this muddy when it rained back home, Ashley frowned. If they had just stayed in Ann Arbor, then she wouldn't be in this mess. Literally. They tossed in the dirty paper towels in the trash and hurried down the hallway. Carrie gave her a last look. It'll be okay, she patted Ashley's shoulder and then darted into her classroom. Ashley put her backpack in front of her so she could hide some of the smudges. Then she walked into the room, slinked to her desk, and sat down without anyone seeming to notice her muddy condition, which felt like a miracle. A minute later, Natalie took her seat. Natalie, the rude girl with the braid who sat right beside her but never said a word. Ashley studied Natalie. As rude as this girl was, Ashley still wanted to be her friend because Natalie wasn't only rude to Ashley. That girl didn't talk to anyone. She seemed to need a friend as much as Ashley did. But being that friend was not turning out to be an easy job. That's when Ashley remembered what her mom had said last night about the situation. Give a compliment or ask a question. Say something kind. Mom's suggestion seemed impossible, especially the way Natalie was acting. The girl wore yellow rain boots and a white flowered headband. Maybe a compliment about Natalie's outfit would help. Ashley was about to do so. Then she paused. Perhaps she should pick a non-muddy day to make her next attempt at friendship. Mr. Garrett took the front of the class. Like I told you, he said, today you will be assigned your sea animals for science projects. Sea animals? Suddenly Ashley's muddy mood lifted. There was a chance this day could get better. All week, Ashley had hinted to her teacher that she would like a dolphin or a sea turtle. She held her breath, and Mr. Garrett handed each student a piece of paper with their animal. Ashley could almost see the words before her teacher reached her. Dolphin, sea turtle, please. Instead, the teacher handed Ashley a page with the image of a slimy, unattractive octopus. Ashley furrowed her brow and shot a look at her teacher. Sir, did you get my hints about the dolphin or the turtle? Yes, he smiled at her, but I gave you the octopus, Ashley. He hesitated. I think you'll enjoy researching an animal you're less familiar with. Ashley stared at the image. so many legs. Yes, Mr. Garrett laughed, and you get to learn about how the octopus uses those legs. He patted her shoulder and moved on. Ashley studied the octopus on her handout. Maybe this creature wasn't so bad. His head was so big, so probably he was the smartest of all the sea animals. That could possibly be interesting. When the lunch bell rang, Ashley felt proud of herself. 3 awful events today. The mud, the silent treatment from Natalie, and the octopus. And she hadn't even cried, not a single tear. Face high, she told herself. She was actually Baxter, and she could wear mud better than anyone else. She could sit next to the mean girl and still have a good day, and she could miss out on the dolphin and the sea turtle and find a way to like an octopus. Look for the good, she thought, something her dad was always telling them to do. But just then, someone behind her in the hallway called her name. The voice belonged to a boy. Ashley didn't have to turn around to know who it was. Landon Blake. Psst, Ashley. He came closer. I'm talking to you. She spun around and looked straight at him. What do you want? Ashley whispered back. She didn't want to get in trouble for being loud in the hall. He smiled a goofy sort of secret smile. Your shoes untied? Landon pointed down at her feet. Look. How could this be happening? Her shoes were muddy and untied. Really? She looked down, but they weren't actually untied at all. They were still perfectly laced. Made you look? Landon laughed. His voice was sort of sparkly. Funny, right? No. Ashley gave him the same look she'd given the octopus a few minutes ago. I have a suggestion, Landon Blake. Okay. He started walking beside her. I have to hear this. She stopped again and studied him. Don't be a comedian. This time he laughed harder, like they were friends or something. You're spunky. Was that supposed to be a compliment? Ashley resumed walking and Landon kept up. I got a sea turtle for the project. He glanced at her. What did you get? An octopus. Ashley could hardly wait to find Marcia at their table. This conversation was getting on her nerves. It was not fair that Landon got a sea turtle. She used her most professional tone. And the octopus is the best because 8 legs, naturally. Nothing else has that. Except spiders, Landon grinned at her. That was it. Landon Blake was officially a menace. Ashley stopped and put her hands on her hips. I really hope you don't embarrass yourself when you present your sea turtle project. She tilted her head. You don't seem like a very mature 5th grader. Oh, like you, who fell in the mud today? Landon pointed at her. That's pretty immature if you ask me. No one asked you. She had no choice but to stay confident here. Whatever you say, Ashley, Landon laughed and kept walking. He looked back just once. Keep being spunky. Suits you. She stared at him as he walked into the boys' table on the other side of the cafeteria, but she had no clever words. She was all clevered out. That afternoon, Mr. Garrett taught the class about the power of friendship, of all things. He said unlikely friendships sometimes made up the fabric of history. Unlikely friendships. Ashley smiled at that idea. Mr. Garrett told them, for instance, Alexander Graham Bell is most famous for inventing the telephone. But did you know that he became a close friend to Helen Keller, who could never hear or speak? He paused. That's not a likely friendship. Mr. Bell helped Helen Keller attend school as a result. His friendship with her had a big impact on history. Ashley let loose a quiet sigh. She was glad Helen Keller had a friend like Mr. Bell, but what about her? Where was her unlikely friend? How come no one in this class had stepped forward to fill that spot? Mr. Garrett walked to his desk. We are going to make friendship bracelets today. I want you to think about someone from our class who you wouldn't normally be friends with. He laid out the materials on the large back table and at the side of the room. Maybe they play a different sport than you, or maybe you think they talk too much, or that they love or comic books is strange. Their teacher made his eyes really big and the class giggled. Give that person your friendship bracelet. Mr. Garrett nodded. Take a chance and make a friend. He shrugged. You just might change history. Ashley was one of the last to visit the supply table. She loved what her teacher had said. Jesus had said basically the same thing in the Bible. Love one another. That's what Mr. Garrett was talking about. Being kind, sacrificing for someone else. But you kind of have to have a friend before you can show kindness, right? Ashley picked out pretty pink and white threads, along with a few purple ones, and she set to work on her bracelet, even though she couldn't think of a single classmate who would wear it. Back at the house, Ashley changed clothes and found her sketchbook and pencils. Then she made her way downstairs. She was sketching herself covered in mud, so she wouldn't forget how she felt. When she heard her mom's voice, "Ashley?" her mom called out from the living room. "There's mail for you on the counter." Mail? Ashley felt her heart do a little dance. She walked to the kitchen, and there it was. She read her name across the front, and then, in the upper left-hand corner, she saw Lydia. Ashley screamed her old friend's name. "It's from Lydia." I'm going to show you the picture of her in her mud before I keep reading. She grabbed the letter and ran to the front porch swing. As soon as she was settled in, she tore open the envelope. "Ashley, hello from Ann Arbor. Summer was boring without you. I did go to Camp Waterloo and I learned how to fence. It was awesome. School has been okay. Things are definitely different since you moved. How is Bloomington? Are you making friends? We should write more letters to each other. I saw Samson the butterfly the other day. Remember the butterfly from last year? I told him to fly to you and say hi. Miss you, Ashley Baxter. Talk to you soon. Your best friend, Lydia." Ashley closed her eyes and held the letter to her heart. "Thank you, Lord, for this happy moment," she whispered. It was just what I needed. She folded up the letter and put it in the back of her envelope. Then she opened her sketchbook, and for a long time she looked again at the picture of her house in Ann Arbor. Finally, she turned to a blank page and drew an octopus, except accidentally it only had 7 legs. She giggled. 7, 8, how could it matter? She had herself deep-sea diving with 3 sea turtles next to the octopus. There, that was better. She was halfway through another sketch when her dad came to the porch. He took the chair beside her. "Sort of a muddy day, huh?" Ashley stared at the rainy sky. Yeah, she looked straight in her dad's eyes. First mud, then the class menace. Menace? Dad raised his brow. I didn't hear about that. Landon Blake, she frowned. He teases me all the time. Little grin came up Dad's face, but then it dropped off. Is the boy being mean? Ashley remembered the day. Not mean, really, just a menace, like he won't leave me alone. I see. Dad was quiet for a minute. You know, Ashley, you can stand up for yourself. He paused. But as far as this boy being a menace, Dad put his arm around Ashley and pulled her close. Sometimes people say the wrong things, even if they mean well. It can come across wrong. Ashley thought about that. True. Maybe he's not a menace. Dad patted her head. He might just need some practice at being nice. Or acting his age. Dad made a silly face. This made Ashley giggle. He says I'm spunky. She wrinkled her nose. So yes, he's a menace. Dad thought for a second. Well, you've already had the mud and the menace. He pulled something from his pocket. Now it's time for some Mentos. He handed them to Ashley. My favorite. Ashley jumped up and leaned over to hug her dad. You always make things better, and guess what? Lydia wrote me a letter. That's what Mom said. Dad turned to her picture. What are you drawing? Ashley held it out. This one is me, and the other one, only person who could ever wear the friendship bracelet we made in school today. Lydia? Dad gave her an understanding look. Yes, for the first time today, Ashley blinked away tears. It had to be someone from our class, and last year she was in my class. She leaned her head onto her dad's shoulders. But I can't give it to her because Lydia is back home, and home is 1,000,000 miles from here. Her dad pulled her into a safe hug, and they stayed that way for a while. Ashley stared at her Mentos, and even though that was the sad truth about Lydia, she felt a little happier because Dad understood her heart. And that was the best news of the entire day. That's the end of chapter 10.